This is David de Rothschild, star of the new show on Sundance Channel called Ecotrip: The Real Cost of Living. He is the seed of the infamous Rothschild family, which together is reportedly worth over $500 trillion. This is over half of the world's wealth. Does this sound like a guy who should be an expert on the real cost of living? Could he ever really relate to the average person? He has also authored the book, The Global Warming Survival Guide, in which he gives us tips for conservation, like switching to internet banking. Of course, his family is in the banking business, so promoting a cashless society would certainly favor those who control the money, our Federal Reserve System, which is a corporation posing as a government agency. And they have been given the right to print money with no congressional oversight. Let's take a closer look at the Rothschild family, the family that runs our monetary system. David de Rothschild comes from a family that has been interbreeding between cousins for at least 3 generations, as a requirement for inheritance and to keep the money centralized in the family name. David's great-great-great-grandfather, Nathan Rothschild, was an immigrant from Germany who bankrupted the Bank of England when he tricked British citizens into liquidating their assets due to false reports that Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo. After World War I, agents for the Rothschilds drafted the idea for the League of Nations, which later morphed into the United Nations. The same United Nations that is trying to replace all European nations' constitutions with their own EU charter, with a global government and a global currency to gain more power over the world. Though now retired, David's father, Evelyn de Rothschild, was the head of N.M. Rothschild. Twice a day, he was responsible for setting the price of gold for the world on the London bullion market. This, of course, was a direct conflict of interest, with his being the director of De Beers Mining, Anglo-American Mining, and Trillium Mining companies, which traded in the gold market he was setting the price for. Remember this when David's show about the making of a gold ring airs. I'm sure that his family's mining interests won't be mentioned at all. Evelyn de Rothschild was also notable for assisting Margaret Thatcher in privatizing or selling off public utilities like British Petroleum and UK Water and Sewage to corporations or private individuals. It is important to note that the Rothschild family also owns Reuters news agency, which in turn owns the Associated Press. We now invite you to think critically about the global warming issue, separating the facts from the hype, and do pay attention to who's supplying the facts. The polar ice caps on Mars and the moons of Saturn and Jupiter are melting. Now, logic should tell you that this is not caused by the actions of humans here on Earth. I'm sure that you believe, like us, that human pollution is a huge problem, and that we can work together to get rid of the poisonous toxins like nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide that cause acid rain and smog. Companies will continue to make cheap, undependable, and disposable consumer goods which rely on non-renewable energy sources, as long as you, the consumer, continue to buy them. By focusing the guilt of global warming on you as an individual, the real culprits of toxic pollution and waste get off the hook while you're distracted with your own carbon footprint. This is a scam. Do not be fooled into paying a tax to make you feel better about polluting. You are smarter than that. We ask that you never forget that the real polluters are the corporations, and that they need to be held accountable for their actions. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Control, or IPCC, is an agency of the United Nations, and its report on global warming was found to contain false scientific and meteorological evidence. This is the report upon which the Kyoto Treaty is based. The real agenda of the purveyors of global warming is taxation, in the form of a big climate lie. The global warming and carbon taxation agenda has 4 major points. First, the carbon tax will be used as a way to usher in socialism, as described by James Hansen, an Al Gore scientific source from NASA who has been caught lying about his climate data. In a letter to President Obama dated December 28, 2008, Mr. Hansen states, "A carbon tax is honest, clear, and effective. It will increase energy prices, but low and middle income people especially will find ways to reduce carbon emissions so as to come out ahead." The second part is carbon accounting. According to SOTT.net, carbon accounting is a device being developed for your cell phone. It can read a barcode on a product and will give you that item's carbon footprint value, which is defined as the amount of carbon emitted for its production, transport, use, and recycling. And this, presumably, will add an extra charge or tax to your... The third point in the global warming and carbon taxation agenda is a new fiat currency. Remember how David de Rothschild advocated online banking in his book? Now bear in mind that increases bankers' control over our real assets and can lead to a cashless society where the bankers would have total control over our economy and over your personal finances. In other words, if you do something they don't like, they can just shut off your life. Lastly, Agenda 21 is a United Nations ploy for land acquisition through eco-tyranny and the disallowing of private land ownership. On the United Nations website, it states, Agenda 21 is a plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations systems, governments, and major groups in every area in which humanity impacts on the environment. Unfortunately for us, this is already taking place. Bill H.R. 146, called the Omnibus Public Land Management Act of 2009, passed both Congress and Senate and was signed by President Obama on March 30th, 2009. This act is actually a bundle of 164 differently sponsored bills. It authorizes President Obama to evacuate by use of the law of eminent domain all American citizens from what are now being called United Nations Biosphere Reserves and Corridors by no later than April 2011. This depopulation of the wilderness areas is not for the purposes of conservation, as it sounds, but is in reality a massive land grab by a rogue government of more than 2 million square acres over 9 of our United States. The Kyoto Treaty is a set of rules and regulations based on the IPCC report mentioned earlier. It has been debunked by a group of 31,000 scientists worldwide who dispute that carbon is toxic or that it causes global warming. The Petition Project states, "We urge the United States government to reject the global warming agreement that was written in Kyoto, Japan in December 1997 and any other similar proposals. The proposed limits on greenhouse gases would harm the environment, hinder the advance of science and technology, and damage the health and welfare of mankind. There is no convincing scientific evidence that human release of carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases is causing, or will in the foreseeable future, cause catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere and disruption of the Earth's climate. Moreover, there is substantial scientific evidence that increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide produce many beneficial effects upon the natural plant and animal environments of the Earth." Interestingly, the founder of the Weather Channel, John Coleman, has been challenging Al Gore to a global warming debate. Not surprisingly, Mr. Gore has never responded to the challenge. It has been said that if the government could find a way to tax us for breathing, they would. Well, they have found that way, through carbon taxation. Now, Congressman Henry Waxman and Congressman Edward Markey are drafting a bill that is already 648 pages long to create just such a tax. They claim that it is to promote clean energy, but according to Americans for Prosperity and many other sources, it will cause massive taxation and job losses. It is interesting to note that Mr. Waxman is the chairman for the Energy and Commerce Committee, and Mr. Markey is the chairman for the Global Warming Committee. So where does this leave us? And what can you do about it? You can start by emailing this video to everyone you know to help us expose the carbon agenda and the lies it uses. You have the power to turn your TV set off and to withdraw support from the Sundance Channel as it promotes propaganda that will result in a carbon tax. You can call the Sundance Channel and complain about this program. Their phone number is 212-708-8002. You can also call your local representatives and Representatives Henry Waxman and Edward Markey at area code 202-224-3121. Tell them that we do not support a carbon tax and that they should quit taking lobby and special interest money from corrupt corporations and rewrite this bill to tax those corporations who create real industrial pollution so that we can fund clean energy. You can conserve. This is the most effective form of pollution reduction from Fed. You can make a difference, but only if you choose freedom over tyranny.